My mom's always hated me. Well, it turns out she gets married to a new guy, and she sends me to live with my grandmother. But oh, things aren't so joyous for Mother anymore, and she comes begging me for help. Growing up, my mom and dad had always had issues, as my mom wasn't the most faithful woman. My mom and dad had always been at each other's throat. I clearly remember my dad telling me the story of how they were in high school, sweethearts of two different worlds apart. He said my mom was the popular girl who every guy in the school wanted, and my dad was the normal nerd. He doesn't remember how they ended up talking and going out, but he does remember having the biggest crush on her, but that all faded until my mom started cheating on him with his friend, well, I should say friends, and other guys. My dad has also been the forgiving type, but my mom wasn't trying to retract her steps, and all since she's never really saw wrong in what she's did. But my dad loved her, so after all her infidelity, my mom would always come back to my dad with, he opened up his arms and would accept her as he loved her. My dad never stopped loving my mom, but he had enough of my mom's infidelity and all, but for him it wasn't a wise decision, as my mom had announced that she was pregnant with his child. Till the date, I didn't understand why he stood by my mom despite all these red flags. And I always asked, but he always said I would not understand why. But I always knew my dad didn't take it easy on himself with my mother. As long as I could remember, Dad had always been the one taking care of me up until I was age 15. My mom never really came around, as she was always with different men. I couldn't count how many men I've seen my mother with, and her infidelities led us to having so many issues. We rarely ever spoke to each other without me looking at her in disappointment and disgust, and she always reminded me that she only birthed me, and I was nothing like her. The last we spoke, she said a lot of things to me, and since then, I never wanted to have anything to do with her. Until my dad passed away, unfortunately. I was traumatized for weeks, as my father was my best friend and companion apart from my school friends. The thought of being stuck with a mother who didn't care about me or knew anything about me was absolutely devastating. As me and my mother weren't exactly the friendly type towards each other, Dad didn't have any siblings or family, so it was only right that my mother had to be my legal guardian till I was at least 18 and legally able to make my decisions. My mother moved into the house finally and started a bunch of rules. She knew I wouldn't follow, not in a million years. I don't have anything to do with her. When we lived together in the house, we had hardly crossed paths, and that brought peace to me. Honestly, I couldn't keep count of how many men my mom had brought inside the house, and I didn't really care, as it wasn't my business to take care of her. I was actually concerned about her, but minded my own business, just as she did to me, not giving a thought about my existence. I wasn't hurt or anything. I learned to live with it a long time ago. It was a particular evening my mom came home drunker than stupor. With an unknown man again, but I wasn't surprised at all. I was just disgusted by how she never failed to hide her character. I wonder if she'd always been like this from childhood, and if yes, why did my father stick with her all these years? The answer to that only he knows. I made my way upstairs when my mom yells for me. I turn around and realize that she wants to pick a fight with me to blow off some steam. I gladly remind her that I'm not here to watch her stare at me and she should hurry up with her ranting. My mother looks me dead in the eyes and starts to tell me how much she hates me and wishes she's never had me. I told her that if she didn't, someone else would have, and it would save me the trouble of dealing with her childish banter all day long. At least the only escape I had was school, and she would be glad that I also didn't wish for a mother like her. Just to hurt me, my mother tells me I was a mistake she and my father had created and could not erase, and the only reason she stayed was because my dad had a promising future, since his late parents were very rich. I thereby reminded her that I wasn't the reason for her freaking behavior and reckless attitude to having me. If she didn't want me so much, she could have taken matters into her own hands. It would have saved us all from any of this trouble. I walked out of the room with a full expression, though I'm hurt by her words. I won't give her the liberty to see me break down. On my way out, I hear my mother yelling my name and how I can't speak to her like that and how she won't take it. The next morning, I get ready for school, in hopes to just have my breakfast and leave without getting my mother spoiled again. Unlucky for me, she was sitting right next to the kitchen island with a glass of water in her hands. I walked by Mother, and knowing her from the past few mornings, I met her. She expected some type of greeting to start a conversation with me. I bring down the cereal to notice it's eaten halfway, though I said nothing and just poured milk into my bowl. I ate my breakfast in peace, as we both don't say anything to each other. I noticed her intense stare, and knew she has something on her mind, but I didn't want to hear it. In my defense, it's early to start an argument, right? I walked out the front door with sparing a glance on my way out, and finally, breath of an air of spending freshness and preparing my day in school. Time goes by slowly, and I'm thankful because I would do anything to avoid spending any amount of moments at the home with Mother. At the end of the school hours, I'm expected to be picked up by my driver, as that's always been the routine. I'm shocked, clearly. He isn't here, and he's always punctual. I had a bad feeling it has something to do with Mother, and just hailed a cab home. To my surprise, while arriving at home, I see a bunch of people at my house. I walk in furious to see my mother throwing a party in my house without my permission. I turned off the loud music and told everyone to get out because the party's over. I told them they don't have to go home, but they have to get the heck out of here. I looked at my mother, who was fuming, and asked what the meaning of this is. I reminded her that this is clearly not her home, it's mine, and she should ask for permission for whatever she wants to do. I reminded her that this isn't her neighborhood, it's my neighborhood. We have a reputation to keep here, not everyone knowing that I live with an irresponsible guardian, and she should at least be ashamed of her character. My mother yells at me, telling me that she's the adult, and I'm a child, which means I abide by her rules. Oh, Mother, I remind her, she's in my house and will abide by my rules, and she should have respected for my late father and his memory if she never thought of that. At least have some respect for me. My mother tells me I'm being a spoiled brat and she can do whatever she wants, as she practically doesn't care about what I think. As far as she's concerned, I've never respected her, so she wouldn't have any respect for me. I reminded her that respect is reciprocal, and until she needs to learn that, we'll always be at conflict with each other. I stormed off, slammed the door behind me, and fall asleep. Till I was awoken by a grumbling tummy, telling me it's time to go make some dinner for myself. Well, as I prepared dinner, my mother walks in telling me that she has something to announce. I didn't look up to her, but I told her I'm listening. She tells me that she's married. It honestly came as a shock to me, as I don't recall seeing any rings, or maybe I just wasn't paying attention, as we've always avoided each other. She explained that she recently got married a few days ago to this man, and he'll be moving in with us. I still couldn't wrap my head around the fact that my mother, who could not stick to one man, got married, but the thought was cut short, as she said he's going to be moving in with us. I told her no one's moving into my house without my permission, especially someone she's getting married to. I asked her if her husband doesn't have a house, and she tells me it's none of my business why he's moving into the house. She also tells me that I should respect him as much as I respected her. Then I cut her off by telling her that I honestly did not respect her, and she says she doesn't care, but he's going to be my stepfather. At this point, I'm furious, and I told her to never think of someone who can replace my father so easily, or even take his place. If she could do that, that's her problem, but I can't. We had a bond, and nothing can break that. While walking out on my mother, I reminded her of how she was never there for me my whole childhood, and she should not act like she cares about me, and she should stay away from my business and affairs completely. It had nothing to do with her. And she should stop using my things without permission. She accuses me of not being happy for her, and I did not give response to her ranting. At the moment, I have no problem with her being happy as long as her happiness didn't get in my way of happiness. I slammed the door short and went back downstairs to finish my dinner and watch some television. Unfortunately for me, I fell asleep on the couch, only to be woken by the noise of my mother returning with her husband. I left the sitting room to go upstairs, but my mother calls me to meet her husband. I ignored them both, and I hear my mother yell my name again. I was stopped in my track and turned around yelling back at her saying, I don't want to have anything to do with you and your husband. We can just stay together without crossing paths in my home. I left after saying what I had in mind, locked my father's bedroom on my way, as I had a feeling my mother would want to move in there with her new husband. This makes my mother furious, as she yells and bangs on my door, but she didn't get any response from me. After a while, she got tired and went to bed. I came out of the room to get a glass of water for myself, then I walked downstairs and caught a glimpse of my mother's husband being sneaky around the house, checking drawers for an object I had no idea of. I clear my throat and make a presence aware that he looks startled, as I asked what he's doing here, and not with his wife. He says nothing and just exits the room. I take his appearance into details as he walks by, making me wary of him. He had this suspicious aura around him, knowing he's up to no good. I wondered deep down where he and my mother had met. I shrugged it off and went to go get a glass of water, head back upstairs to my room. The next morning, I get ready for school, and on my way downstairs, I overheard how my mother's husband doesn't feel welcomed. I honestly didn't care, but what grabbed my attention was that my mother asked how he would feel welcomed, and he said if she transfers half the property into his name. My mother then says she doesn't have the property in her name, but it's in my name. She then said she would see what she could do about it. My mother was basically telling this dude that she would ask me to transfer half the property to his name just to make him feel more welcomed in my home. I walked down the stairs pretending I did not overhear their crazy conversation with she and her husband. Then I hear my mother following behind me to tell me she wants to talk. I noticed a change in her voice as she sounded a bit extra sweet, and I asked with this calm voice and asked what she wants from me. She then proceeded by saying that we haven't really been on good terms and she would like to fix that. She asked me what I want for breakfast, and I told her not to worry about it. I can perfectly take care of myself. My mother insists, and I told her that I'll just have my cereal without any help from her. When I see she's not budging, I ask her why she's being so nice to me, and she says she wants to talk, wants to have a mother-to-daughter talk. I replied to her saying, why does she suddenly want to have this mother-to-daughter talk after all that she said? I let her know I'm not stupid and would like for her to just get to the point of why she's being so nice. She asked if I could do her a favor of transferring half the property into her husband's name just to make him feel welcomed into the family. I reminded her that I'm not the one that married a man who has no family relations or whatsoever, so why should I welcome him into a family when he isn't part of the family? And even if I wanted to, I couldn't. My dad stated before he died that I could only have access to his will and property when I'm the age of 21. My mother looked disappointed and walked out the door. At this point, I don't feel like having breakfast and just made up my mind and stopped at a coffee shop and to have my breakfast there. I returned from school to find my mother's husband at home. I didn't ask of her whereabouts, and I headed upstairs when he said he wants to talk to me. I've never had a problem with him, but I was curious about what he wanted to say. He tells me that he doesn't feel welcomed in this house, and I don't treat him as a father, or any relationship that is. I plainly stated the fact that it's not my business. I wasn't the one who married him, making us have no relations. As for him replacing my father, dude, it couldn't happen. He tells me I'm being insensitive, and I'm reminding him to never cross my path in the house again. As I have no hard feelings towards him, I just didn't want to see him or like his face. He feels offended at this point and turns to grab me by my hand. I yank his hands off me and turn into a heated argument. I respectfully told him whose house he's in and whose money he's spending, and if he doesn't like my rules, he can get out and never look back. And he should stop touching me or I'll be forced to throw him out now. I walked out and he was furious, absolutely seething. He awaits my mother's return and told her that I threatened and insulted him. My mother storms into my room and starts yelling at me. She says she's had enough of me and decides to send me to my grandparents, and it wasn't my decision to make. Well, I became furious and told her that I'm not going to leave my house empty. She says she doesn't care. She says I should get ready that my driver would be taking me there ASAP. After a few days, I could come back just to cool off. Then I saw this as a great idea, as I've always wanted to get away from her and her husband. So you know what? I packed my bag of all my essentials, making up my mind that I'm not coming back to this house until I'm legal enough to throw them out. On my way out, I lock all my doors, leaving only the room they're using still, clearly showing them that I own the house and I'll be back. Well, I arrive at my grandparents' place to find out that my mom doesn't exactly have a good relationship with her parents either. But I'm glad they could still take me in. They helped me settle and told me of how they've been meaning to meet me, but have never been able to give me the chance. My grandparents ask why my mom sent me here to live with them. I told them everything, leaving out no details, and they also think it's best that I just stay with them. I go to school from my grandparents' house till I graduate high school and got into a prestigious college. When I turned 23, my grandparents informed me that my mother has been looking for me and going back and forth hoping to see me. Well, I refuse, as I have not forgotten what my mother did to me. I eventually gave in to seeing her after she asked me out to coffee. She tells me how much she missed me and how she wants to reconcile. I asked her about her husband, and she tells me that she caught him cheating on her with another woman, and how she feels so bad about how she treated me. I don't think I can ever forgive my mother. I'm torn between rationality and emotions. I still have all the money that my father left me, and I don't intend on giving her a dime. Guys, please help me out in the comment section by maybe giving me a little bit of advice. I felt so bad for OP during this entire story. I mean, her father died, and now she's stuck between a rock and a hard place. Her mother, who maltreated her for so long, is trying to get back into her life. So that leaves me with one question for you guys. What exactly would you do if you were in OP's position and this struggle was happening to you? Let me know your thoughts, comments, and opinions, and if you've ever been in a similar situation, drop it down below and let's talk about it, guys. Thank you so much for joining in. My name's Mr. Reddito, if you don't know who I am. I read stories every single day, so come check out the channel, subscribe, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day.